Good day, guys. So, welcome to part 2 of our lecture. So, this is a continuation of our lecture last week. So, I think just for a brief recap, we talked about urbanism last week. And then now, for the remaining 16 slides, we're going to talk about urban planning. So, first, let's define urban planning. So, first definition is that it is the control of housing and land uses. So take note, the keyword there is control, which means that you're going to regulate the uses of land and the housing that you're going to build on it. Then it is second definition is that it is the design of urban environment, infrastructure, and transportation network. So the keyword there is design of infrastructure and transportation network. And the third is that it includes the consideration of urban regeneration. So that's urban planning as defined by Dr. Seraphim Polizeus, a lecturer in the Department of Planning and Regional Development in the University of Thessaly in Greece. Okay, next slide. So what are the key components in urban and regional planning? So urban and regional planning is essentially exercising premonitive control on non-physical and physical components that impact the operations of a society. So it has three components and there's a synergistic connectivity between these components. So the first component is the policy. So I think when you talk about policy, these are the written somewhat set of directions on how you're going to go through your urban and regional planning. I think this is the legislative side. Was basically you could enact laws. The government have enacted laws on policies on urban and regional planning. Then the second component is the built environment. That is where we architects come in. The third component is sustainability. So sustainability, I think you've heard this a lot at 1,000 times in even in your other subjects. Since we're living on a world with limited resources, it is important that we think about the future. Think about a sustainable future which would benefit society. So policy, built environment, and sustainability goes hand in hand as the key components in urban and regional planning, and these all have synergistic effects that help each other. So, what are examples of non-physical factors that urban and regional planning touches on? Okay. So, another question: what are the physical components of an urban area? Okay, as you can see here, if you look at this example of a um, pedestrian overpass, maybe this is I think this is from Thailand. If you look at the architecture of the housing, okay. So this is an example of physical components. This is a space where people travel to another part of the community. Then, of course, we have here the road networks. This example, I think this is from the Philippines when you look at the jeepneys. Okay. So railroad networks or transportation networks, they're part of the physical components of an urban area. And of course, you also have your buildings here. Let me just go back to the other side. Okay, so there's no example stated. So what are examples of urban spaces? And these are the types of urban areas. We have the metropolis and metropolitan area. It is a chief city but not the capital. It refers to any large city. So, what are the large cities here in the Philippines? So, we have Cebu, and then I think Bonifacio Global City. We have Makati also. So, these are examples of metropolitan areas. It's a chief city, but it's not the capital. Soon here in Cagayan de Oro, I think we're going to the direction of Metro CDO, but it's not the capital of the Philippines. Then we have the conurbation, megalopolis, and superconurbation. The spatial merging of two or more cities along major transportation corridors. Superconurbation is a giant conurbation of a megalopolis with a population of at least 12 million. So I'm not so sure if it's the population in Manila is already enough. Uh, I mean, specifically Metro Manila to reach 12 million. But maybe it could be an example of a conurbation. Then we have a city. So a city is a political designation, financial and human resources. So it's a place governed by an administrative body or organization larger than a town or village. So example here is our city, Cagayan de Oro City. So it's governed by our city mayor. Then we have new towns. It's a self-contained planned urban community built from scratch, providing optimum living conditions for its residents. Usually for a specific niche, it is planned unit developments or PUD. Slide. So let's look at the definition of terms. What is an urbanite? So an urbanite is an individual living in the urban area, projecting an urban way of life using elements of an urban lifestyle. So I think we could be considered urbanites because Cagayan de Oro is already an urban area. Then urbanization is the process of urban growth which has two phases. The movement of the people from the rural to the urban, a change of lifestyle, values, attitude, behavior from rural to urban. Then we have urbanized area. So the built up area where essentially urban land uses, we have here the buildings, the roads, etc. predominate. So you have to look at these things, buildings, roads, and other methods, physical forms of transport in a city, considered an urbanized area. Then you have the city system and the urban system. This is the hierarchy of cities in a country based on economic, population size, and other functions, interlinked by increasingly sophisticated transportation and communication networks. So guys, I think here in the Philippines, we have a city system. We have hierarchies of cities also. Then our capital is is Manila. And then we have a ranking of cities based from the most urbanized, the highly developed ones, which has higher income, and then going down to the more rural areas here in the Philippines. Then another term is urbanism. It is a broad concept generally referring to all aspects, the political, the economic, and the social of the urban way of life, and it's considered the end result of urbanization. Okay, next slide. Okay. This statement states that urban design is an intervention. So why do you think, guys, urban design is an intervention? Because basically, if you just let things be, people will just settle anywhere. A good example is look at what's happening here currently in our city. If you look at the city um, from above, you could see that it is not properly designed, especially when you compare it in the context of European and American cities. Development just sprout from anywhere. So I think Cagayan de Oro was never thought of to become a large city back in the past, 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Because you look at Divisoria, it's not designed to accommodate a large volume of people. Why urban design is an intervention? Because when you design a city, you future proof it. Okay? It's an intervention because when you design, you solve problems that may arise in the future. So it is an intervention because some cities are already there, but there is no direction. With urban design as an intervention, you could decide the direction on what's the proper way to arrange the physical and non-physical components of a city in order to promote sustainability uh, and other important considerations which affect the way of life of people that are living. So, is intervention limited to the design of the built environment? So, when you say design, guys, that's something that's mostly when you think about it, you're thinking of an architect doing the planning phase or a group of engineers, environmental planner, the urban planner. But is the intervention only limited to the design of the built environment? Of course not. Interventions could either be in the form of policy or other things to help out and plan the growth, the future growth of a city, the future direction that it will take. Because remember, guys, that cities they're not only shaped by the design of the built environment, but they're also shaped by political and socio-economic factors. So political means that there should be policies and laws that should be enacted in order to enforce policies and guidelines that will shape the urban form of the city. So in your opinion, what is the most important consideration in the design of built environment? So this is a question task that I'm going to ask you. Okay. What do you think is the most important consideration in the design of built environment? So this is going to be your activity for this week. I'm going to post this in the Padlet. I want you to reflect on this after hearing our lecture. Okay, next slide. So nothing in this world is more simple and more cheap than making cities that provide better for people. Okay. So just remember, class, that we as architects, when we design, we think about our client and we think about the users of the building that we design. When we talk about the urban planning and design of cities, you need to consider on how you're going to make the people's lives living in that city much more comfortable and much more uh, healthier. So how are you going to do that? Perhaps you want to add more trees, more space for the bike lane. Uh, Perhaps you may want to separate the residential from the industrial zone areas. And you can achieve that um, not just through design but also through policies. Next slide. So what is good urban design? So what's a sign of good urban design? So think about that class. I think a good example of a good urban design, practically when you are talking about it, if you have already traveled to other countries, you look at Singapore. Okay. What I really appreciate about Singapore is that when you go from one place or another, the transportation networks are well connected. So I think the buses arrived on time, the trains arrived on time, and I think basically the entire country is quite walkable. You can see a lot of trees also, so it's like a, a city within a jungle, or a jungle within the city. So I mean, I think the place, the physical aspect itself, it's already quite nice. Contrary here in the Philippines, wherein it gets too hot. I mean, there's not a lot of trees you can see around. It's not walkable. Even if you just walk a kilometer from our university, you're going to get burned, especially if you're going to walk during the daytime. Because you're going to inhale the dust from the vehicles. And it's really hot because there's not much trees, and it's not a good place to bike because there are no separate bike lanes, so it's not really pedestrian friendly. So maybe a good example of good urban design is that it's pedestrian friendly, and you could get from one place or another efficiently. When you think about it, I think a city with good urban design is a city where even the rich commute and not use their cars. So that's something that we should think about here in the Philippines. So urban design in the people. So people proud of their places are the mark of good urban design. So that's by Michael Dobbins. So urban design came to describe the design functionality, how they look and how they performed. We are still far away, guys, here in the Philippines. We're still far away from this. Maybe because we're still a developing nation, we're still a young nation. But when you think about it, how come that there are a lot of Southeast Asian nations that are already overtaking us in terms of development? And we go and visit their places because they're quite good. We visit Thailand, we visit um, Singapore, we visit Malaysia, and even Indonesia. Okay. So until we become proud of where we came from, not the Filipino pride, then we could say that we have a good urban design. So imagine if Cagayan de Oro has a lot of bike lanes, a lot of trees covering the sidewalks, and everything is clean. So I think it would really impact our way of life as a people. So livability, it is the sense of space, place, and community. So a good thought to ponder is, are we living in a livable environment? Of course, we've been here in the Philippines for a long time already and we're used to what we are seeing. But hopefully in the future, we could learn from our other Southeast Asian neighbors on how they develop their cities. Okay, next slide. So these are the references. So this is part 2 guys of our lecture. Okay. So this, think about this. What is the first most important consideration in the design of built environments? So I'll be posting this in our Padlet link. Um, See you next meeting.